First things first, this review is going to be spoiler free. If you've been avoiding every single bit of marketing and don't want to know a single thing, then I'd recommend coming back to this review after you've seen the film. But in talking about the film, I will not be giving away any major plot details. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is, and nearly wasn't, written and directed by James Gunn and is the final film in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. That is not a spoiler, James Gunn has been saying that for over a year. I'm not going to give a plot description because the marketing has been very hush-hush on what this movie is actually about, but it features the Guardians of the Galaxy, I'll tell you that much. The first Guardians of the Galaxy to this day is still my favourite MCU film. I think it's incredibly fresh, it's entertaining, it's emotional. I don't like the second one quite as much, but I still think it's really good fun. So despite the fact that I think the MCU has been on a decline recently, I was excited for Volume 3. If you've seen the marketing, then you probably got an idea that Rocket Raccoon is really a focus in this movie, and he is the best thing about it. James Gunn explores a lot of his backstory and it is incredibly emotional. The scenes exploring his background, they'll have you smiling but they'll break your heart at the same time. I loved everything to do with Rocket in this film. I think in general Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 carries a lot of emotion and a lot of it hits really hard. I think the two other major standout characters are Drax and Groot. I think they provide some of the funniest moments in the film, and just in general I like what James Gunn did with their characters. I've seen a lot of complaints online about how Adam Warlock was handled. Now, I've never read the comics, so I'm not particularly well versed in Adam Warlock. I do agree that yes, they probably could have given him more to do, but I was very entertained by Will Poulter in the role, so I enjoyed watching Adam Warlock on screen. I think there are a number of really entertaining action scenes, and as I said, this film gets a lot of laughs. I laughed quite a bit watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So there's a lot I like about this movie, and Rocket is the best thing in it. However, when the film is more centred on the other Guardians members, that's when the film is at its weakest. I think the biggest issue here is the stakes. On paper, the mission the Guardians go on feels like it should be really high stakes, it feels like there should be something at risk, but something in the way it was executed, it feels more like a side mission than anything. And because of that, I didn't feel the severity of the stakes. They feel very low, and therefore I just wasn't as engaged in the story as I wanted to be. This movie has a lot going on, and it has too much going on. This film is 2.5 hours and the pacing can really drag. Certain narrative choices between cutting back and forward between past and present and then cutting between all the other storylines, it can feel jumbled and you can definitely feel that 2.5 hour runtime. A part of Guardians of the Galaxy is the uniqueness of it, and in that, the films can feel a bit weird. However, I think Volume 3 gets overly weird, and it got to points where it just pulled me out of the movie. Because as I said, it's supposed to be weird, but even for Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like this film pushes a boundary. I wish the villain in this film was given more depth. While the villain tells us what he's going for, we never actually understand why he wants to do the thing he wants to do, and therefore that can make him feel underwritten. And my final big issue with the film is that, again, going back to big parts of Guardians of the Galaxy, the soundtrack. Everyone remembers the soundtrack of a Guardians of the Galaxy film. It's such a huge part of the DNA of it. However, I wasn't big on the soundtrack in this film. Not all of them, but I feel like a lot of the soundtrack choices felt forced. They just felt like they were put in the scene because they needed music, whereas in the other films they felt more naturally integrated. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a mixed bag. While I do think it's better than most of the Marvel Phase 4 offerings, I was disappointed with it overall. I do also think it is easily the weakest in the Guardians trilogy. I'm going to give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 a B-. I will say, despite being disappointed in this film, my opinion on James Gunn running DC has not changed. I still think him and Peter Safran are the perfect guys to do it, so I'm very much looking forward to James Gunn's Superman film especially. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. You guys are awesome. Blu-ray Billy, logging off.